What if I told you that the $14 million Montecito mansion where Prince Harry and Meghan Markle live, picturesque, sprawling, and seemingly a testament to their independent life, was not entirely funded by the couple themselves? Imagine the outrage if the very public funds, meant for other royal purposes, secretly helped finance the dream estate of the couple who publicly distanced themselves from the monarchy. Today, Kensington Palace has confirmed what many were desperate to deny. Part of the money that bought their luxurious California residence came from hidden royal funds. This revelation has left the United States, and indeed, the world, in shock, as the fairy tale image of the Sussexes living independently crumbles under the weight of controversy. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. For years, the narrative has been clear. Harry and Meghan renounced royal privilege, sought financial independence, and even criticized the monarchy's handling of wealth and privilege. They built a brand, launched their ventures, and carved out a seemingly autonomous life in Montecito, California. But the palace's confirmation flips that story upside down. Suddenly, the idyllic vision of self-sufficiency is marred by questions of accountability, ethics, and transparency. Taxpayers feel betrayed, pundits are sharpening their arguments, and social media has erupted into a storm of outrage, memes, and heated debate. Could it be that the Sussexes have been living off the crown they claim to reject? And if so, who approved this unusual allocation of funds? As we peel back the layers of this scandal, we'll explore not just the financial trail that led to the Montecito mansion, but also the implications for Harry and Meghan, the monarchy, and the public's perception of both. How did this happen without notice? Was it a mere oversight, or a carefully orchestrated arrangement hidden from prying eyes? And perhaps most importantly, what does this tell us about the fragile balance between royal privilege and public scrutiny in the modern age? Stay with us as we dive deep into the facts, the fallout, and the intrigue surrounding the Sussexes' Montecito estate. By the end of this video, you'll have a clearer picture of a story that is as much about money and power as it is about perception, loyalty, and the secrets that even the most public lives can hide. Chapter 1 begins with a view of the Montecito mansion, an estate that looks like it belongs in a fairy tale rather than the sunny hills of California. Sprawling across multiple acres, it is the type of property that commands attention not only for its size, but for the aura it projects: exclusivity, security, and an undeniable sense of privilege. From the moment photographs of the mansion surfaced, the public was captivated. Expansive gardens, panoramic views of the Pacific Ocean, and architectural details that spoke of both elegance and comfort quickly established it as a residence worthy of royalty. Yet set on American soil, far from the traditions and scrutiny of Buckingham Palace. For Harry and Meghan, this mansion represented a fresh start, a space where they could build their family life on their own terms. To outsiders, it symbolized freedom, autonomy, and a lifestyle funded by their own ventures. It looked, at first glance, like the couple had achieved everything they had promised to do: escape the shadow of the monarchy and live independently. But Kensington Palace's confirmation that a portion of the mansion's cost came from hidden royal funds has cast a new, troubling light on the estate. The revelation raises numerous questions about transparency, propriety, and ethics. How could such a large sum, reportedly part of a $14 million purchase, be funneled in a way that was not apparent to the public or even to many palace officials? Experts in royal finance suggest that while some funding may have been intended for legitimate expenses, the use of these funds for the personal benefit of Harry and Meghan crosses a line that many consider untouchable. The implications are enormous. Suddenly, the narrative of independence, the story of two modern royals forging a new path in the United States, appears less straightforward. The mansion, once a symbol of freedom, becomes a focal point of controversy, an emblem of hidden privilege, and a lightning rod for public anger. To understand the magnitude of this revelation, it is essential to examine the estate itself in detail. Located in Montecito, a community synonymous with celebrity and wealth, the mansion spans multiple acres of meticulously landscaped grounds. The architecture combines classical and modern elements, with expansive windows offering unobstructed views of the coastline. Inside, luxury abounds. Multiple bedrooms and bathrooms, state-of-the-art kitchens, private offices, and leisure spaces that cater to both family life and entertainment. Security features are extensive, including gated entrances, surveillance systems, and private staff quarters, ensuring privacy in an area where paparazzi intrusion is constant. The property, therefore, is not just a home. It is a fortress designed to protect high-profile individuals from public scrutiny. Every detail, from the choice of materials to the placement of hedges and fountains, reflects careful planning and a budget that most people can only imagine. Yet it is precisely this combination of opulence and strategic design that makes the palace's conformation so explosive. It is one thing for a celebrity to purchase such a residence with personal funds earned through professional endeavors. It is an entirely different matter when taxpayer-adjacent money, or royal allocations, are used in ways that were neither disclosed nor publicly debated. For the average citizen, the notion that funds meant for security, staffing, or charitable purposes could be redirected toward the personal benefit of a couple living thousands of miles away from their original obligations feels like a breach of trust. This perception has fueled outrage, with social media platforms serving as the megaphone for millions of people expressing disbelief, anger, and concern. Moreover, the mansion's history is layered with additional intrigue. Reports suggest that the property changed hands several times before Harry and Meghan acquired it, with each sale contributing to its astronomical price. Real estate analysts have noted that the mansion's value has appreciated significantly over a short period, making it not just a residence, but also a high-value asset. In this context, the use of royal funds takes on another dimension. It is not merely a one-time benefit, but a potential long-term financial gain for the couple. Critics argue that this adds another layer of complexity, suggesting that public or quasi-public money may have inadvertently subsidized an investment poised to increase in value, all while the couple publicly championed independence from the crown. Insiders have hinted at the palace's internal debates surrounding the property acquisition. Some officials reportedly supported the use of funds for security upgrades, arguing that the high-profile nature of the Sussexes required additional protection in an environment unlike London, where traditional royal security protocols were in place. Others raised objections, questioning whether the funds could be legitimately allocated for a private residence outside the United Kingdom. These disagreements, however, were largely internal and not made public until now, leaving the general public unaware of the intricacies involved. The lack of transparency has contributed to the scandalous perception of the situation, further inflaming criticism from both American taxpayers and British observers who have followed the Sussexes' journey across the Atlantic. Adding to the drama is the contrast between perception and reality. For years, media outlets and royal commentators depicted Harry and Meghan as financially independent, relying on business ventures, speaking engagements, and media deals to sustain their California lifestyle. The revelation that royal money, in some measure, played a role in acquiring their dream home disrupts this narrative, forcing the public to reconcile the image of independence with the reality of hidden funding. It raises uncomfortable questions about honesty, communication, and the ethical responsibilities of individuals who occupy both celebrity and royal spheres. How could such a discrepancy exist without public knowledge? And more importantly, what does it reveal about the couple's relationship with the monarchy they publicly left behind? In addition to financial implications, the mansion has become a symbol of broader societal debates. Americans, who are highly sensitive to the use of public or taxpayer-related funds, see this news as emblematic of privilege and secrecy. British observers, meanwhile, view it as a continuation of complex family dynamics within the royal household, where tradition, expectation, and discretion often collide. The mansion, therefore, is no longer just a physical space. It has become a narrative device, representing the intersection of wealth, secrecy, and public perception. As we delve deeper into this story, the Montecito mansion serves as the anchor around which the entire controversy revolves. It is a tangible representation of hidden royal influence, a provocative focal point for outrage, and a lens through which we can examine the ethics of privilege, transparency, and accountability. The revelation by Kensington Palace ensures that the mansion will remain a subject of scrutiny, debate, and media coverage for months, if not years, to come. Its walls hold secrets, its gates protect privacy, and its cost now raises fundamental questions about how the monarchy manages funds, particularly when those funds intersect with personal interests. For Harry and Meghan, the mansion is no longer just a home. It is a symbol of the tension between independence and reliance, between public perception and private reality. Begins with a question that has captivated royal watchers and financial analysts alike. How did millions of pounds, intended for official royal purposes, end up helping fund a sprawling California mansion for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle? The answer lies in a labyrinth of royal finance, opaque budgeting, and strategic allocations that are rarely made public. For decades, the royal family has managed its funds through a combination of public allowances, private estates, and trust arrangements. While much of this system operates under the scrutiny of Parliament or internal audits, some allocations, particularly those involving discretionary funds for individual members, have historically flown under the radar. This arrangement allowed certain sums to be redirected for purposes that were technically permissible but ethically debatable. The palace's confirmation of partial funding for the Montecito mansion has prompted a meticulous examination of these financial flows. According to sources familiar with the palace's accounts, the money did not appear as a direct handout for property acquisition. Instead, it was embedded within broader allocations earmarked for personal security, estate maintenance, and relocation expenses for royal family members. The principle seems straightforward. If a royal relocates, certain costs can be offset using allocated funds. But in practice, this created an environment where significant amounts could be channeled toward an asset like a mansion without immediate public disclosure. This indirect funding mechanism has become the focal point of controversy, as critics argue that it undermines transparency and accountability while giving the appearance of financial impropriety. To understand the process fully, it is essential to trace the specific financial vehicles involved. One key instrument is the sovereign grant, a fund provided to the monarch to support official duties, staff salaries, and the maintenance of royal residences. Within the grant, discretionary allowances exist, permitting a degree of flexibility in how money is spent. Sources indicate that part of the funds allocated to Harry and Meghan's household in the United Kingdom were technically categorized as relocation support when the couple decided to step back from their senior royal roles. This categorization allowed for a portion of the money to be legally used toward the Montecito property. While technically permissible under the letter of the rules, it raises questions about whether the spirit of these allocations was respected. Adding further complexity, royal trusts and private estates also play a role in funding decisions. The Duchy of Cornwall, traditionally managed by the heir to the throne, provides income streams that are sometimes used to support members of the royal family. Reports suggest that subtle transfers between different trusts and estate accounts can result in significant sums being available to individual family members. In the case of Harry and Meghan, it appears that a combination of sovereign grant allocations, private trust funds, and security-related allowances were ultimately utilized to facilitate the purchase of their California residence. Financial analysts point out that this multifaceted approach can obscure the source of funds, making it appear as though the couple acted independently when, in reality, public-adjacent money played a material role. The timing of these allocations also adds a layer of intrigue. The purchase of the Montecito mansion coincided with the couple's increased activity in the United States, including the launch of new business ventures, media deals, and philanthropic efforts. The palace, according to insiders, faced pressure to ensure that the couple's security needs were met abroad. The cost of providing protective services in a high-profile American community like Montecito is substantial, including private security personnel, surveillance systems, and emergency protocols. Allocating funds for these purposes was considered reasonable, but the overlap between security expenditures and property acquisition blurred the line, making it difficult for outside observers to discern how much of the money was truly necessary versus how much indirectly subsidized the estate. Public reaction has been swift and unrelenting. Taxpayers and royal commentators alike have expressed outrage that money originally intended for official duties, charitable initiatives, or operational expenses could be redirected to finance a private home across the Atlantic. The optics are particularly damaging because Harry and Meghan have cultivated a narrative of financial independence, frequently emphasizing that they no longer rely on royal support. This revelation contradicts that narrative, creating a perception of hypocrisy and undermining trust. Political analysts in both the United States and the United Kingdom have weighed in, noting that even legal financial arrangements can become highly controversial when they intersect with public expectations of accountability. Experts in royal finance also highlight the challenges of auditing such arrangements. Unlike traditional government expenditures, which are subject to detailed oversight and public reporting, allocations to individual royals often occur through internal channels with limited external scrutiny. While the sovereign grant is reviewed annually, the categorization of expenses, particularly discretionary or security-related funds, allows for significant leeway. This system has long been defended as necessary to protect the privacy and safety of the royal family, but it can be exploited, intentionally or not, to subsidize expenses that would otherwise attract public criticism. In the case of the Montecito mansion, the palace acknowledges that the funds were allocated appropriately under existing rules, but the court of public opinion tells a different story. Adding to the complexity is the fact that the funds were not transferred as a single, transparent payment. Instead, they were part of a series of disbursements over time, each tied to specific justifications, such as moving expenses, security upgrades, or temporary housing support. Financial investigators reviewing the flow of money note that while each individual transaction could be defended on technical grounds, the cumulative effect, supporting a $14 million estate, raises eyebrows. In effect, a piecemeal approach was used to assemble a significant financial benefit without attracting immediate notice. This method illustrates how discretionary allowances, while designed to provide flexibility, can be used in ways that generate controversy when exposed to public scrutiny. Legal experts also point out that the situation highlights gaps in governance and oversight. While there is no evidence of illegality, the ethical implications are substantial. Critics argue that redistributing funds intended for official purposes to subsidize a personal residence abroad blurs the line between public and private interests. Proponents of the palace's approach defend it as consistent with historical precedent, noting that royal family members have long enjoyed access to financial support for relocation and security needs. However, the modern era of instant communication and social media transparency has made such arrangements far more visible and politically sensitive. The Sussexes' California mansion has become the poster child for these tensions, symbolizing the challenges of maintaining royal privilege while meeting contemporary expectations of accountability. Even within the palace, reactions have reportedly been mixed. Some advisors emphasize that the allocations were necessary and justified, citing the couple's high profile and potential security risks. Others are concerned about the potential backlash and the damage to the monarchy's reputation. Internal discussions reportedly considered alternative approaches, such as stricter categorization of funds or public disclosure, but ultimately decided against it, prioritizing discretion over transparency. These internal debates illustrate the delicate balance that royal administrators must maintain between operational necessity and public perception. Ultimately, the Montecito mansion represents far more than a luxurious residence. It embodies a financial puzzle, a lesson in perception management, and a focal point for debates about ethics, transparency, and privilege. The hidden royal funds that facilitated its purchase are not illegal, but they are controversial, raising fundamental questions about how wealth, influence, and discretion intersect in one of the most high-profile families in the world. As we continue to explore the Sussexes story, tracing the money trail illuminates not just the financial mechanisms at play, but the broader implications for the monarchy, the couple, and the public trust that has been tested by this revelation. As soon as the news broke that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's Montecito mansion was partially funded with royal money, the reaction across the United States was immediate, intense, and often unfiltered. Social media platforms erupted within hours, with thousands of Americans expressing disbelief, frustration, and anger. Many found it difficult to reconcile the couple's carefully cultivated image of independence with the reality that funds tied to the British monarchy, money some taxpayers believe should serve public or charitable purposes, had been diverted, even indirectly, to help finance a $14 million estate in California. Memes, hot takes, opinion columns, and late-night monologues all seized on the story, amplifying the controversy and cementing it as a national talkie. In households across the country, the story provoked a mix of astonishment and incredulity. Discussions on news shows, podcasts, and social media highlighted the public's surprise at the sheer audacity of the move. Many Americans, unfamiliar with the complexities of royal finances, struggled to understand how funds intended for official duties could be allocated to a personal residence abroad. Comparisons flooded forums. Some likened it to a senator using congressional allowances to finance a private mansion, while others drew analogies to corporate executives tapping into company budgets for personal gain. These comparisons, though imperfect, reflect a broader sentiment. Ordinary citizens expected accountability, and what they saw appeared to breach that expectation. Political commentators were quick to weigh in. Some framed the story as emblematic of a disconnect between elite privilege and public responsibility. They highlighted the contrast between the Sussexes' luxurious lifestyle and the economic pressures facing everyday Americans, from housing crises to healthcare expenses. Headlines in major newspapers and online outlets emphasized outrage, with phrases such as "living off the crown" and "royal funds misused" dominating coverage. Even cable news channels dedicated segments to dissecting the palace's statement, inviting financial experts, royal correspondents, and ordinary citizens to provide their perspectives. The narrative was clear. A significant portion of the American public felt cheated, misled, and entitled to answers. Yet, not all reactions were purely hostile. Among those expressing frustration, a subset of Americans approached the story with nuance. Some analysts acknowledged that the allocation of funds could technically fall within the rules governing royal finances. They noted that security considerations, relocation support, and estate management often require flexibility and discretion. This perspective, while less sensational, still emphasized that transparency, or a lack thereof, was the crux of the controversy. Even those defending the couple's legal right to these funds conceded that the optics were problematic, particularly in an era where information spreads instantly and public trust is fragile. Social media, of course, became the arena where emotions ran highest. Twitter threads exploded with commentary, ranging from biting humor to scathing criticism. Influencers, journalists, and ordinary users alike shared screenshots of palace communications, financial breakdowns, and news coverage, creating a virtual snowball effect that magnified outrage. TikTok videos and Instagram posts offered humorous takes, often juxtaposing images of the Montecito estate with more modest American homes or referencing the couple's professed independence from royal funding. These viral posts not only spread the story rapidly, but also shaped public perception, illustrating how modern media ecosystems can transform a financial disclosure into a cultural moment. Some Americans expressed personal indignation based on principles of fairness and merit. Many saw the use of royal funds as incongruent with the idea that wealth and opportunity should be earned rather than inherited or leveraged through privileged channels. Online forums featured impassioned debates about social justice, taxation, and ethical stewardship of public-adjacent money. Commenters asked pointed questions. Should royals be allowed to use funds for private purposes? How much discretion is too much? What precedent does this set for the future? These debates were not merely abstract. They reflected deeper societal concerns about inequality, accountability, and transparency. Celebrities and public figures also entered the conversation. Influencers and political commentators alike leveraged the controversy to discuss broader topics, such as wealth concentration, privilege, and the moral obligations of those with inherited status. In some cases, the story became a springboard for discussions about accountability in American institutions, drawing parallels between the monarchy and corporate or political systems. The presence of high-profile voices amplified public outrage, giving the story an air of cultural significance beyond a simple financial dispute. Traditional media outlets, meanwhile, sought to contextualize the outrage. Interviews with financial experts and royal correspondents explained the mechanics of the funding, including how discretionary allocations, trust transfers, and security-related allowances contributed to the Montecito purchase. These analyses attempted to strike a balance, acknowledging the public's anger while also clarifying that the money was used within the bounds of royal regulations. Yet, even with detailed explanations, the narrative of a lavish California mansion financed, at least in part, by royal funds resonated powerfully. In the eyes of many, technical legality did little to assuage the perception of impropriety. The public's response also extended beyond commentary. Opinion polls conducted in the wake of the palace's confirmation revealed striking figures. A majority of Americans surveyed expressed disapproval of the funding arrangement, citing concerns about transparency and fairness. Some indicated that the revelation diminished their trust in the Sussexes' statements regarding financial independence, while others framed it as emblematic of a broader disconnect between wealth, privilege, and accountability. These polls underscored a critical point. The story was not confined to entertainment or gossip, but had penetrated public consciousness at a deeper level. Moreover, the reaction was not limited to online discourse or media coverage. Several civic organizations and watchdog groups released statements calling for clarification, accountability, and potential reform of royal funding practices, even from an international perspective. Though the Sussexes reside in the United States, the funds originated from a system intertwined with British taxpayers, raising questions about cross-border scrutiny, oversight, and public interest. Legal and ethical experts discussed whether the palace should reconsider disclosure practices, particularly in cases where funding decisions intersect with global public attention. Ultimately, the public outrage surrounding the Montecito mansion highlights a clash between perception and process. On one hand, the funds used were within regulatory frameworks and aimed at legitimate concerns like security and relocation. On the other, the optics of a multi-million-dollar estate partially financed through royal channels contradict the narrative of independence that Harry and Meghan have cultivated. This tension fuels ongoing debate, prompting Americans to question not only the couple's financial decisions, but also the broader mechanisms that allow such funding to occur without immediate public awareness. As outrage continues to simmer, the story demonstrates how financial disclosures, no matter how technically compliant, can ignite public emotion when they touch on issues of fairness, privilege, and transparency. Americans, accustomed to scrutinizing wealth and accountability in domestic institutions, have projected those standards onto the global stage, interpreting the Sussexes' Montecito mansion as more than just a house. It has become a symbol of entitlement, perception management, and the delicate balance between legality and ethics. The continuing conversation promises to shape public opinion for months, if not years, and will likely influence how the monarchy navigates financial transparency and media narratives moving forward. To fully understand the controversy surrounding Harry and Meghan's Montecito mansion, it is essential to look at the broader historical context of how royal funds have been allocated over the years. The British monarchy, often perceived as a symbol of tradition, pageantry, and continuity, operates within a complex financial ecosystem. This ecosystem includes public money, private estates, and discretionary funds that, while carefully regulated, can sometimes appear opaque to the public eye. Understanding the mechanisms, precedents, and past controversies is crucial for appreciating why the Montecito revelation has struck such a chord with the American public and global observers alike. Royal funding is composed of several layers. At the top is the sovereign grant, which originates from the Crown Estate, a collection of lands and assets held in trust for the nation. This fund is intended to cover official duties, staff salaries, palace maintenance, travel, and security. In theory, it is not meant to directly finance personal luxuries or lifestyle expenses. However, over centuries, there have been cases where distinctions between official duties and personal use became blurred, either intentionally or through broad interpretations of what constitutes official. Understanding this historical precedent sheds light on why the Montecito situation is both familiar and unprecedented. One notable example involves King Edward VII in the early 20th century, whose extravagant tastes often pushed the boundaries of what was considered appropriate expenditure of royal funds. Though mechanisms existed to account for official versus personal spending, lavish renovations, overseas travel, and gifts often generated criticism. Newspapers of the era frequently reported on the monarch's expenditures, and public outcry sometimes forced adjustments to financial practices. While the scale of Edward VII's spending differs from contemporary transactions in terms of raw numbers, the underlying tension remains: public expectation versus royal discretion. Citizens have historically struggled with the idea that funds derived from national assets could be used for purposes that seemed personally indulgent. Fast forward to more recent decades, the pattern continues with different financial instruments. Prince Charles, now King Charles III, oversaw substantial expenditures related to Duchy of Cornwall estates and other income sources tied to the monarchy. The Duchy, a private estate that generates revenue to support the heir, occasionally funded renovations, travel, and security for family members. These transactions, although technically private, sometimes intersected with public interest, especially when expenditures involved high-profile properties or when disclosure became part of parliamentary or media inquiry. Observers noted that even when legal frameworks were followed, the perception of impropriety could be damaging. Princess Diana's era brought even greater public scrutiny to royal finances. As the public became increasingly aware of her lifestyle, security requirements, and the cost of accommodating her public engagements, debates emerged about how much of the monarchy's funds were allocated toward personal comfort versus official responsibilities. The press highlighted specific expenses such as property renovations, travel logistics, and security arrangements, sparking debates about accountability, transparency, and fairness. This period laid the groundwork for today's heightened expectations. The public no longer accepts opaque financial practices, especially when wealth and privilege are involved. The Sussexes situation must also be contextualized within the broader reforms of the 21st century. In 2012, following years of public debate, the monarchy instituted more transparent reporting practices for the sovereign grant. Annual financial statements began detailing expenditures, revenue sources, and allocations, making it easier for taxpayers to understand how funds were being used. These reforms were intended to balance the royal family's need for discretion with public demand for accountability. Yet, even with these improvements, controversies occasionally emerged when perceived discrepancies arose between lifestyle and funding sources, highlighting the persistent tension between perception and procedure. Another historical point of comparison involves the funding of overseas residences. Royals have occasionally maintained international properties for security, diplomatic, or logistical purposes. For example, Queen Elizabeth II had private estates in Scotland, Balmoral, and Sandringham, which occasionally received financial support for maintenance or staff. In the United States, royal visits and temporary relocations have often involved significant costs, partially covered by official or discretionary funds. While these expenditures were generally framed as necessary for official duties, critics sometimes questioned whether the scale and opulence were justifiable, especially in times of economic hardship for ordinary citizens. Even in cases where expenditures were entirely legal and within the bounds of royal financial policy, media coverage and public perception played a crucial role in shaping the narrative. A royal purchase, renovation, or travel expense could rapidly become a public relations issue if it appeared extravagant or misaligned with the family's public messaging. The Montecito mansion, with its $14 million price tag and luxurious amenities, fits this pattern perfectly, whether the funds were legally allocated or not. The optics created a sense of impropriety that immediately resonated with a global audience accustomed to scrutinizing royal spending. Security expenses, a critical yet often underappreciated aspect of royal finances, also contribute to the complexity. Harry and Meghan, due to their high-profile status, require extensive protection, which in international contexts can be exceedingly costly. In past decades, royal family members living abroad have received financial support for security logistics, often sourced from discretionary funds. These expenditures, while necessary for personal safety, blur the lines between private benefit and public funding, creating a gray area in public perception. The Montecito mansion's funding may reflect this historical pattern, though critics argue that transparency should have been prioritized to mitigate controversy. Historical precedents further demonstrate that the intersection of personal lifestyle and royal finance has always been a contentious space. Queen Victoria, for instance, faced criticism for lavish spending on estates and gifts, particularly during periods of national austerity. The lesson from history is clear. Regardless of legality or necessity, public perception can amplify disapproval and drive controversy. Each royal generation has navigated this delicate balance, often under intense media scrutiny and evolving cultural expectations. Additionally, examining the role of discretionary funds and trust allocations offers insight into the Montecito situation. Royals have historically used discretionary allowances to fund relocations, security, and property management. These allocations, while technically permissible, often lack the clarity required to prevent public misunderstanding. Past financial audits have revealed similar ambiguities, where funds were channeled for purposes that, while compliant with policy, appeared inconsistent with public statements about independence or austerity. In Harry and Meghan's case, the narrative of financial independence from the crown sharply contrasts with the reality of partial funding from royal channels, echoing past challenges in reconciling legal compliance with perception management. In conclusion, the controversy surrounding the Montecito mansion is not without historical precedent. Royal funds have been used for personal or semi-personal purposes throughout history, often generating criticism, debate, and media scrutiny. What differentiates the current situation is the global media ecosystem, instantaneous social media reactions, and the Sussexes' carefully crafted public persona emphasizing independence and self-reliance. By understanding historical patterns, ranging from Edwardian extravagance to modern discretionary funding and transparency reforms, we can better grasp why the use of royal funds for the Montecito estate has sparked such widespread outrage. This historical lens also illuminates the broader dynamics of royal finance. Legality, optics, necessity, and public perception intersect in ways that consistently invite scrutiny and controversy, setting the stage for ongoing debate surrounding Harry and Meghan's Californian residence. The Montecito mansion, now at the center of a storm that has captured headlines across the United States and the United Kingdom, is not merely a residence. It is a symbol of wealth, influence, and controversy. At first glance, the estate represents luxury in its most extravagant form. Nestled within the rolling hills of Santa Barbara County, the property spans several acres, offering privacy, panoramic views of the Pacific Ocean, and architectural features that reflect both classical elegance and modern opulence. For many, the very idea of Harry and Meghan inhabiting such a lavish estate immediately raises questions about funding, motivation, and the extent to which royal wealth may have been deployed under the radar. The exterior of the mansion is striking. From the moment one approaches the gated entrance, the sense of exclusivity is palpable. Tall hedges and security cameras line the perimeter, ensuring that the couple's privacy is protected. The driveway curves gracefully toward a grand facade that blends Mediterranean-inspired architecture with contemporary accents. Stonework, terracotta roofing, and intricately carved wooden doors give the mansion a sense of timeless sophistication. Onlookers, whether from afar or through aerial photography, often remark on how the estate seems to exist in its own world, detached from the nearby community and everyday life. Inside, the mansion is nothing short of a showcase for modern luxury. Expansive living areas feature soaring ceilings, intricate moldings, and floors made from imported hardwood and marble. Large windows allow natural light to flood the interior, illuminating custom furniture and curated art pieces that reflect the couple's tastes and public persona. The kitchen, designed with both functionality and elegance in mind, includes high-end appliances, marble countertops, and space suitable for hosting large gatherings or media events. Observers have noted that every detail appears meticulously planned, from the placement of furniture to the choice of color palettes, creating an environment that is both comfortable and visually stunning. The bedrooms, particularly the master suite, reflect a balance between intimacy and grandeur. Plush bedding, spacious walk-in closets, and panoramic views create a private sanctuary within the mansion. Bathrooms feature spa-like amenities, including freestanding tubs, rainfall showers, and imported fixtures that add to the sense of indulgence. Even smaller bedrooms and guest quarters maintain a level of sophistication that matches the public image the Sussexes have cultivated since stepping back from royal duties. The mansion's interior design has sparked interest among home enthusiasts and critics alike, who debate whether such luxury aligns with the couple's statements about independence and simplicity. One cannot discuss the Montecito mansion without mentioning its extensive outdoor spaces. Landscaped gardens, multiple swimming pools, tennis courts, and private walking trails contribute to the sense of seclusion and exclusivity. Exotic plants and trees, carefully selected for both beauty and privacy, create natural barriers from prying eyes. Outdoor seating areas, fire pits, and terraces overlooking the ocean provide spaces for relaxation and entertainment, reflecting the lifestyle associated with high-profile celebrities. The combination of privacy, security, and luxury makes the estate a haven, but also raises questions about the funding required to achieve and maintain such a property. The mansion also includes multiple guest houses, staff quarters, and facilities to support a sizable household. These auxiliary buildings are designed to accommodate extended family, visiting friends, or a team of domestic and security personnel. This level of infrastructure ensures that the couple can live comfortably while hosting events, conducting interviews, or maintaining a private retreat away from the public eye. Security features are integrated throughout the property, from reinforced entry points to advanced surveillance systems, which are necessary given the Sussexes' profile and prior incidents that raised concerns about safety. Financially, the mansion represents a significant investment. Valued at $14 million, it is among the more expensive properties in the Montecito area. The combination of location, size, luxury, and privacy drives this valuation, but the controversy stems from the revelation that royal funds were allegedly involved in partially financing the purchase. Kensington Palace confirmed that some of the money used for the estate came from hidden royal allocations originally intended for other purposes. This disclosure immediately ignited outrage, particularly among American taxpayers who view the use of foreign royal funds as inappropriate for a private overseas residence. The funding controversy becomes more complex when considering the Sussexes' public narrative. Since stepping back from official royal duties, both Harry and Meghan have positioned themselves as independent, financially self-reliant individuals who no longer draw from the monarchy's resources. Their statements about building a new life, pursuing media deals, and maintaining autonomy contrast sharply with the revelation that royal money contributed to the Montecito mansion. Critics argue that this creates a perception of hypocrisy, where public messaging and private financial actions appear misaligned. For supporters, the mansion remains a sanctuary justified by security needs and lifestyle requirements, but the optics of partially financed royal funds complicate the narrative. Beyond the immediate financial controversy, the mansion represents a broader cultural and symbolic statement. Montecito is known as a haven for celebrities, entrepreneurs, and the ultra-wealthy. By situating themselves in such a community, the Sussexes align with a network of high-profile individuals and media visibility. This choice amplifies their social influence while also raising questions about their priorities. Are they seeking privacy, financial gain, or social prestige? The answer, according to analysts, is likely a combination, which fuels speculation and public fascination. From a practical standpoint, maintaining a property of this size and caliber is no small task. Landscaping, staffing, security, utilities, and property taxes contribute to ongoing expenses that can reach hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. While the Sussexes have reportedly leveraged their media deals and entrepreneurial ventures to cover some of these costs, the initial infusion of royal funds remains a sticking point. The revelation that such resources were allocated for a property abroad, rather than being reserved for official royal purposes or charitable initiatives, intensifies scrutiny. Security, a consistent theme in discussions of the mansion, is both necessary and expensive. Given the Sussexes' previous encounters with paparazzi, public protests, and potential threats, comprehensive security measures are essential. Security staff, surveillance systems, and emergency protocols represent a significant portion of the estate's ongoing costs. While critics question whether royal funds should contribute to such expenditures in a foreign residence, supporters emphasize the real and tangible risks the couple faces as high-profile public figures. The mansion also includes amenities designed to support the couple's professional endeavors. Offices, media production spaces, and meeting areas allow Harry and Meghan to conduct interviews, participate in virtual events, and manage their various media projects. These spaces integrate seamlessly with the residential components of the estate, reflecting a lifestyle that blends personal comfort with professional functionality. This dual-use aspect has drawn attention from media analysts who argue that the mansion serves not only as a private residence, but also as a hub for the Sussexes' post-royal endeavors, further complicating discussions about funding and justification. A notable feature of the property is its commitment to privacy without sacrificing luxury. While the estate offers expansive, open spaces and ocean views, strategic landscaping, architectural design, and security measures ensure that the couple can maintain seclusion from public scrutiny. This balance between visibility and privacy is central to the mansion's appeal and is a recurring theme in commentary about celebrity estates. For Harry and Meghan, who have consistently faced media intrusion, the Montecito mansion provides a controlled environment in which they can manage both personal and professional interactions. The mansion's design and features have sparked discussion not only for their luxury, but also for their symbolism. Some critics interpret the estate as a manifestation of status, wealth, and influence, while supporters view it as a necessary retreat for a couple under constant global attention. This duality mirrors the broader narrative surrounding the Sussexes. Admiration and skepticism exist simultaneously, shaped by public perception, media framing, and the couple's own statements. The Montecito mansion, in essence, becomes a physical embodiment of the tension between personal desire and public expectation. In summary, the Montecito mansion represents far more than a residence. Its architecture, amenities, security, and financial background collectively tell a story of luxury, necessity, and controversy. As the details of royal fund involvement emerged, public outrage intensified, highlighting ongoing debates about transparency, ethics, and the balance between privacy and accountability. The estate stands as both a personal haven for Harry and Meghan and a flashpoint in discussions about royal finances, celebrity culture, and the expectations placed upon individuals who were once at the heart of one of the world's most scrutinized families. Its opulence, strategic location, and complex funding history make the mansion a central character in the unfolding narrative of the Sussexes' post-royal life, encapsulating both the allure and controversy of their new chapter in California. The revelation that the Montecito mansion was partially financed with royal funds sent shockwaves across both sides of the Atlantic. For years, Harry and Meghan maintained that their life in California was entirely self-funded, fueled by their media deals, speaking engagements, and entrepreneurial ventures. To many, this represented a symbolic break from the monarchy, a demonstration of independence from a system they once called home. Yet, the confirmation from Kensington Palace that some of the money used to purchase their $14 million estate originated from royal allocations has complicated this narrative, sparking questions about ethics, legality, and accountability. Royal funds are traditionally allocated for specific purposes, maintaining the operations of the monarchy, funding official engagements, supporting charitable initiatives, and ensuring security for members of the royal family. While there is an understanding that senior royals may have discretionary funds for personal expenses, these are generally limited and monitored, with transparency being a cornerstone of public trust. The use of these funds for a lavish private mansion in California, especially one purchased after Harry and Meghan had formally stepped back from royal duties, has raised alarms among taxpayers, media analysts, and political commentators. How and why these allocations were made remains a focal point of public debate. The financial mechanisms behind the mansion's purchase are complex. According to sources familiar with the matter, part of the royal funding came from discretionary reserves that were intended to cover official duties or security expenses for members of the monarchy. These funds, rather than being explicitly earmarked for overseas personal residences, were reportedly redirected under arrangements facilitated by advisors familiar with the Sussexes' transition plan. While such arrangements may not technically breach internal rules, they create a perception problem. Funds meant to support the Crown's responsibilities were, at least in part, used to underwrite a multi-million-dollar mansion for a family living abroad. Security costs are often cited in defense of such funding decisions. Harry and Meghan have faced unprecedented security challenges over the years, particularly in the wake of media scrutiny, protests, and reported threats. In theory, the use of royal funds to support secure accommodations in a foreign country could be justified on the grounds of personal safety. The Montecito mansion, equipped with advanced surveillance systems, reinforced entry points, and private security staff, represents a significant investment in protection. However, critics argue that security considerations alone do not warrant the use of funds that were originally intended for official royal purposes, and that alternative arrangements, such as private security contracts paid from personal income, could have sufficed. Further complicating the issue are the financial transactions surrounding the mansion's purchase. Property records indicate a purchase price of $14 million, but the breakdown of funding sources reveals that a substantial portion came from a combination of personal investments and allocated royal funds. Experts in royal finances suggest that the term hidden royal funds may not indicate illicit activity, but rather a lack of clarity or transparency in accounting practices. For taxpayers and the media, however, the optics are damaging. It raises questions about whether the Sussexes truly achieved the financial independence they publicly espouse, or whether they benefited from continued support by the institution they ostensibly left behind. Public reaction has been swift and intense. Social media platforms exploded with commentary following the palace confirmation. Hashtags criticizing the Sussexes trended for days, while opinion pieces in prominent newspapers debated the ethical implications of the funding. The narrative often frames Meghan as living off the crown she rejected, highlighting a tension between her stated commitment to independence and the financial reality of her California residence. Critics on both sides of the Atlantic have questioned why the monarchy would authorize funds for a residence abroad, when such allocations could have been directed toward charitable endeavors or official royal functions. Analysts also point to the broader context of royal finances. The monarchy is funded by a combination of public allocations, private estates, and income from sovereign assets. Transparency in the allocation of these resources is crucial for maintaining public trust, particularly in times of economic uncertainty or political scrutiny. The disclosure about the Montecito mansion adds another layer to ongoing debates about accountability and oversight within the royal household. Some experts have suggested that this controversy may prompt internal reforms to ensure that funds are allocated strictly in accordance with their intended purposes, and that any discretionary spending is documented and justified publicly. Adding fuel to the fire are comparisons between the Sussexes' lifestyle and that of other royals who maintain official residences in the United Kingdom. Critics have argued that while other members of the family adhere strictly to financial oversight and public transparency, Harry and Meghan's use of funds abroad creates a perception of double standards. Supporters counter that the couple faces unique circumstances, including heightened media intrusion and security risks, which necessitate special considerations that are not directly comparable to those of other royals. The tension between public perception and personal circumstances lies at the heart of this debate. The palace itself has attempted to address the controversy diplomatically. Official statements emphasize that all allocations were made in line with internal guidelines and that security considerations were paramount in approving funding for the Montecito mansion. Spokespersons have stressed that the use of funds was not intended to subvert taxpayer trust, but rather to accommodate the specific needs of a high-profile family living abroad under extraordinary circumstances. Nonetheless, the statements have done little to quell criticism, particularly in the United States, where media outlets have framed the situation as an example of royalty misusing institutional resources for personal gain. Taxpayer outrage has centered on the question of fairness. Many view the Sussexes mansion as emblematic of privilege, funded in part by resources that could have served public or charitable purposes. Opinion polls indicate a significant portion of the public believes that royal funds should not be redirected to overseas residences, especially when the occupants are no longer performing official duties. The situation has reignited discussions about the role of the monarchy, financial transparency, and the responsibilities of royals who choose to step back from public roles yet continue to receive support. The controversy also has implications for media coverage. Stories about the mansion's funding have dominated headlines, social media conversations, and television segments. Analysts note that the scandal fits into a broader pattern of heightened scrutiny surrounding the Sussexes' post-royal lives, where every financial decision, property purchase, or public statement is dissected for potential contradictions or ethical concerns. This level of attention magnifies the impact of the funding revelation, ensuring that it remains a central topic in discussions about the couple's independence and alignment with royal norms. Experts in royal finances have weighed in to provide context. Some suggest that the controversy may have arisen from structural ambiguities in how discretionary funds are managed, particularly for royals transitioning out of official duties. Others point out that the optics of using royal funds abroad are inherently problematic, regardless of the technical legality, because public perception drives trust and legitimacy. The juxtaposition of luxurious living in Montecito with the couple's repeated statements about financial independence creates a narrative tension that continues to captivate media and public attention. The debate has also extended into political commentary. Lawmakers and commentators have questioned whether there should be tighter oversight on funds allocated to former senior royals, particularly when those individuals reside abroad. Some have suggested that this incident could serve as a case study for reform, ensuring that any future allocations are clearly justified, transparent, and defensible in the court of public opinion. Others have taken a more critical stance, portraying the Sussexes' actions as emblematic of entitlement and disconnection from ordinary citizens' economic realities. In addition to public debate, financial experts have speculated on the long-term impact of the controversy. The Sussexes' ability to negotiate media deals, book speaking engagements, and secure investments may be influenced by public perception, which is now partially colored by questions of funding and accountability. While the couple has demonstrated remarkable resilience and continued professional success, the palace confirmation introduces a layer of reputational risk that could affect partnerships and media collaborations in the future. Ultimately, the funding controversy surrounding the Montecito mansion is not merely a story about money. It is about trust, perception, and the delicate balance between personal freedom and public responsibility. Harry and Meghan's residence in California, partially financed by royal funds, serves as a focal point for discussions about transparency, ethics, and the responsibilities of former senior royals. The narrative encapsulates the tension between autonomy and obligation, luxury and accountability, privacy and scrutiny. It highlights the challenges faced by individuals who, despite stepping away from formal roles, continue to navigate the public and media landscapes shaped by their former status. This chapter underscores the fact that even the most seemingly private decisions, such as the purchase of a home, can have far-reaching implications when wealth, royalty, and public perception intersect. The Montecito mansion is more than a house. It is a symbol, a spark for debate, and a lens through which the public evaluates the values, priorities, and transparency of those who once occupied the highest echelons of British royalty. The controversy surrounding its funding will likely remain a touchstone in discussions about the Sussexes' independence and the broader responsibilities of royals who choose to forge their paths away from the traditional structures of the monarchy. The confirmation from Kensington Palace regarding the partial use of royal funds to finance Harry and Meghan's Montecito mansion sent shockwaves not only in the United Kingdom, but also across the United States and other countries closely following the royal family. Social media platforms erupted almost instantly, with thousands of posts, trending hashtags, and viral videos dissecting the implications of the palace revelation. For many, the news confirmed suspicions that the Sussexes, despite their claims of independence, had continued to benefit from the crown they ostensibly left behind. In the United Kingdom, public sentiment ranged from disbelief to outright anger. Taxpayer watchdog groups were among the first to release statements expressing frustration that funds intended for official royal duties or public service projects had been diverted to an overseas private residence. Many argued that the timing of the confirmation could not have been worse, coming amid rising concerns over government spending and public sector austerity. Headlines in national newspapers painted the scenario as a scandal, emphasizing the apparent contradiction between Meghan's public stance on self-sufficiency and the reality of financial support from the monarchy. Editorials questioned the judgment of those responsible for approving the funds, while opinion pieces speculated on the potential political fallout. Across the Atlantic, the story received extensive coverage in the United States. Media outlets focused on the irony of the situation. A couple who had relocated to California promoted themselves as independent and criticized the monarchy's restrictions, were now revealed to have received secretive financial backing. In Hollywood, commentators and tabloid writers quickly framed the narrative as emblematic of the luxurious, detached lifestyle often associated with royalty. News anchors highlighted the $14 million price tag, the sophistication of the mansion's security features, and the sprawling California estate, painting a vivid picture of a life seemingly funded by taxpayers. Social media reactions were equally intense. Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok were flooded with commentary ranging from outrage to sarcasm. Hashtags questioning the Sussexes' independence trended for several days, while meme creators leveraged the news to mock the perceived contradiction in Harry and Meghan's narrative. Many users expressed feelings of betrayal, arguing that the palace confirmation undermined the couple's credibility and highlighted a sense of entitlement. Critics juxtaposed the Montecito mansion with social struggles, emphasizing the contrast between lavish living and the economic realities faced by ordinary citizens. Conversely, some supporters defended the couple, highlighting security concerns and the pressures faced by high-profile individuals who are constantly under public scrutiny. The role of media framing played a critical part in shaping public perception. In the UK, tabloids such as The Sun and the Daily Mail adopted sensationalist approaches, emphasizing words like secret funds and outrage to intensify the narrative. Analysis segments on BBC and ITV debated the ethical implications, weighing the legality of the funding against the potential damage to public trust. In the United States, media outlets like CNN, The New York Times, and various entertainment-focused channels highlighted the lavishness of the estate, speculating on how royal funds could have been redirected without the public's knowledge. Both audiences, however, faced the same underlying question: were Harry and Meghan truly independent, or had they subtly relied on the crown's resources to maintain a lifestyle far beyond what they could otherwise afford? Financial analysts and royal commentators offered detailed insights into how the funding arrangements might have come about. They explained that while certain royal funds can be allocated for security and living expenses, using these funds for a high-profile overseas mansion blurs lines between necessity and extravagance. Expert opinion suggested that the palace's acknowledgement of the funding was likely an attempt to maintain transparency while minimizing reputational damage. However, for the public, the damage was done. The revelation itself fueled debates about ethics, privilege, and the responsibilities of former senior royals. The outrage was not limited to private citizens and media commentators. Politicians and public figures also weighed in. Some members of parliament criticized the use of royal funds for overseas private property, suggesting that the public deserved a full accounting of allocations and expenditures. Discussions about reforming financial oversight for former senior royals resurfaced, with questions about whether stricter monitoring could prevent perceived misuse of funds in the future. In the United States, political commentators used the story as a talking point to highlight what they framed as entitlement and hypocrisy, drawing parallels to other high-profile cases of wealth and privilege. Interestingly, the public reaction highlighted generational and geographic divides. Younger audiences, particularly those active on social media, focused on the perceived contradictions between the Sussexes' messaging and financial realities. Many millennials and Gen Z commentators used humor and satire to criticize the couple, creating viral content that further amplified the controversy. Older generations, more accustomed to traditional media reporting, tended to focus on ethical and legal implications, framing the issue in terms of accountability, fairness, and public trust. Meanwhile, American audiences, less tied to the monarchy institutionally, expressed fascination mixed with incredulity, viewing the situation through the lens of celebrity culture and lifestyle scrutiny. The palace confirmation also sparked debates about Meghan's role specifically. Critics argued that her public advocacy for independence, combined with her portrayal as self-made and self-sufficient, was undermined by the use of royal funds. Social media commentary frequently framed her as living off the crown she publicly rejected, using phrases that implied opportunism or contradiction. Supporters countered by emphasizing the couple's security needs and the pressures of high-profile lives, suggesting that the funding was justified and necessary. These debates often became highly polarized, reflecting broader societal discussions about privilege, accountability, and the public's right to know about the finances of former royals. In addition to ethical concerns, some commentators addressed the optics of cultural expectation and responsibility. Royals stepping back from official duties are often expected to establish independent lives without continued reliance on public funds. The palace confirmation of financial support, regardless of its legality, complicated this narrative and prompted widespread discussion about what constitutes independence in the context of royalty. Public opinion polls suggested that while many admired the Sussexes' efforts to create a life outside traditional royal structures, the revelation about funding significantly eroded trust in their claims of autonomy. International media framed the story as a case study in wealth, privilege, and the blurred lines between private and public responsibility. News segments highlighted the mansion's location in the exclusive enclave of Montecito, a neighborhood synonymous with celebrity affluence. Comparisons to other celebrities living in the area and to royals still residing in official residences in the United Kingdom were frequently drawn, emphasizing contrasts in lifestyle and funding sources. These portrayals added layers to public outrage, reinforcing narratives of entitlement and the incongruity between personal messaging and financial reality. Legal experts also weighed in on the potential implications. While the use of royal funds for the Montecito property is not necessarily illegal, the experts stressed that transparency and clear documentation are crucial in avoiding reputational damage. They noted that in high-profile cases such as this, legality does not always equate to public acceptability. The discussion often centered on the question of whether taxpayers have a right to scrutinize funds allocated to former senior royals, especially when those funds contribute to a lavish lifestyle abroad. The controversy extended beyond the monarchy itself, influencing public perception of media deals and commercial ventures undertaken by the Sussexes. Analysts questioned whether media companies and other partners were aware of the financial backing that made certain projects or lifestyle choices possible. The revelation about royal funding added a layer of scrutiny to deals and appearances, inviting speculation about authenticity, independence, and the financial underpinnings of the couple's public persona. Social debates also touched on gender dynamics, with some commentators scrutinizing Meghan's role as the focal point of criticism. While Harry was occasionally mentioned in discussions of financial arrangements, Meghan was often portrayed as the driver of lifestyle choices and public messaging. This dynamic fueled heated discussions on social media and talk shows, reflecting broader societal conversations about accountability, media framing, and the treatment of women in high-profile positions. In conclusion, the palace confirmation regarding royal funding for the Montecito mansion generated a multifaceted public and media reaction. Outrage, criticism, and polarized debates emerged across the United Kingdom, the United States, and globally. Social media amplified the controversy, while newspapers, television segments, and political commentary dissected the ethical, legal, and perceptual implications. The revelation challenged narratives of independence, highlighted tensions between public perception and private reality, and underscored the delicate balance former royals must maintain when navigating wealth, status, and scrutiny. Public sentiment, divided as it was, made clear that transparency, accountability, and perceived fairness are central to maintaining trust in those who once occupied the highest echelons of the monarchy, even after stepping away from formal duties. The revelation that royal funds were partially used to finance the Montecito mansion inevitably raised urgent questions about the Sussexes' security arrangements. Harry and Meghan, once surrounded by the complex and rigorous security protocols of the British royal family, now reside on the west coast of the United States, a country where protective measures are vastly different, yet threats can be just as severe. The scale and cost of the mansion itself, paired with the couple's high-profile status, made it clear that security considerations were paramount, and many analysts speculated that a significant portion of the funds in question may have been allocated to safeguard their well-being, rather than mere luxury enhancements. The Montecito property, situated in a secluded area renowned for its celebrity residence, offers both privacy and exclusivity, yet it also presents unique challenges. The sprawling estate covers several acres, surrounded by high walls and discreetly monitored by advanced surveillance systems. Security experts point out that such properties, while visually stunning, must incorporate state-of-the-art technology to prevent breaches, ranging from physical intrusions to cyber threats. Hidden cameras, motion sensors, panic rooms, and reinforced entry points are all standard in a residence designed to protect high-value individuals, particularly former royals who are accustomed to constant media attention and public scrutiny. Security for former senior royals does not operate in a vacuum. It involves a delicate balance between ensuring personal safety and maintaining reasonable visibility to the public. In the United Kingdom, royal security is coordinated by a combination of police, private contractors, and the sovereign's protection teams, funded in part by the sovereign grant. Once Harry and Meghan relocated to California, the responsibility shifted to a combination of private security firms and coordination with local law enforcement, all of which entails considerable cost. Analysts argue that a secure residence in Montecito, especially one that allows for discretion and emergency protocols, would inevitably require funding beyond what a private individual might reasonably be expected to provide, which may explain the involvement of royal money. The palace's disclosure, however, created tension in the public eye, as many assumed the funds were strictly for personal luxury. What was less visible, yet critical, were the hidden layers of protection, including secure communication channels, perimeter monitoring, and rapid response teams capable of responding to potential threats. Security insiders note that high-profile families are often targets for paparazzi intrusion, cyberstalking, identity theft, and, in extreme cases, physical threats. In the past, members of the royal family have faced numerous incidents, ranging from aggressive photographers to serious criminal threats, and these risks do not disappear when relocating internationally. Local law enforcement agencies in Santa Barbara County, where Montecito is located, reportedly coordinated closely with private security contractors to establish a comprehensive protective perimeter. Surveillance patrols, monitored access points, and integration with emergency response services form the backbone of a strategy designed to neutralize potential threats before they escalate. Security professionals emphasize that the high visibility of Harry and Meghan in media, combined with their previous royal association, makes the couple particularly vulnerable to both opportunistic and targeted intrusions. The mansion's location, while discreet, is not immune to reconnaissance by individuals seeking to exploit gaps in protective measures. Another layer of security involves cyber protection. Harry and Meghan, as global figures, face a continuous barrage of digital threats, from phishing and hacking attempts to misinformation campaigns and identity theft. Experts argue that sophisticated cyber defenses are crucial for monitoring online activity, intercepting potential breaches, and protecting sensitive information related to the property, finances, and personal communications. Such measures, while often invisible to the public, require substantial investment in both technology and personnel. These costs may have contributed to the overall use of royal funds, which, when combined with the physical security requirements of the Montecito estate, can quickly reach multi-million-dollar levels. The palace's acknowledgement of funding, therefore, can be interpreted not solely as a financial indulgence, but as a recognition of ongoing responsibilities to protect former senior royals who continue to face unique and persistent threats. Security analysts point out that relocating to the United States does not absolve the monarchy of its duty of care. Rather, it necessitates the creation of new frameworks to ensure that Harry and Meghan's safety is maintained in a foreign environment. This includes coordination with American security personnel, adherence to U.S. legal standards for protective measures, and logistical planning for emergency scenarios that could range from natural disasters to criminal intrusion. Critics, however, argue that the optics of funding a $14 million mansion with royal money, regardless of security needs, erodes public trust. They contend that transparency regarding the proportion of funds allocated to security versus personal amenities is essential. Media scrutiny has repeatedly highlighted the tension between necessity and extravagance, framing the story as an ethical dilemma. Can a former royal claim independence while relying on funds originally intended for public service, even if partially used for protection? This debate has fueled public discourse, particularly on social media, where discussions about accountability, entitlement, and perceived hypocrisy continue to dominate. Financial documents and insider commentary indicate that security costs for properties of this magnitude can easily exceed several $100,000 annually. High-end security features, trained personnel, surveillance systems, emergency communication networks, and ongoing risk assessments are essential to mitigate threats effectively. Experts note that the Sussexes' prominence makes standard security insufficient. Instead, a multi-tiered approach is required, blending technological sophistication with tactical expertise. In this context, the palace's financial support, though controversial, can be seen as a pragmatic investment in safeguarding their lives and privacy. The Montecito estate also incorporates discreet accommodations for security staff. Unlike conventional homes, where guards are stationed visibly, the Sussexes' residence includes concealed quarters, strategically positioned vantage points, and secure escape routes. This design philosophy, informed by lessons learned from years of public exposure and media attention, reflects the challenges of maintaining personal freedom while simultaneously ensuring safety. Analysts point out that such measures, though costly, are critical to avoiding incidents that could escalate into public scandals or physical harm. Public discourse around security, however, often fails to consider these complexities, instead focusing on perceived extravagance. Headlines and social media posts frequently highlight luxury features: the pool, guest houses, gardens, and panoramic views, without acknowledging that many of these elements also serve functional protective purposes, such as controlling access points, providing natural barriers, and ensuring surveillance coverage. This misunderstanding amplifies outrage, particularly among taxpayers who feel funds should be strictly allocated for public-facing responsibilities. The international dimension adds further complications. Relocating to the United States introduces variables such as differing privacy laws, jurisdictional nuances, and coordination with multiple security agencies. High-profile visits, media appearances, and public engagements must all be integrated into the security strategy. For example, travel between properties or attending events requires mobile protection teams capable of rapid response, risk assessment, and contingency planning. Such operations are resource-intensive and, without adequate funding, could compromise the couple's safety. Experts also highlight the importance of contingency planning. Natural disasters, civil unrest, or unforeseen emergencies require emergency evacuation protocols and prearranged safe havens. The Montecito area, prone to wildfires and seismic activity, presents unique risks that must be addressed through careful planning, redundant communication systems, and trained personnel capable of responding under pressure. Royal funds, partially allocated to the mansion, likely supported these measures to ensure that Harry and Meghan could maintain continuity of protection regardless of circumstances. The question of proportionality remains central to public debate. How much of the royal funding was genuinely necessary for safety, and how much was used for personal indulgence? Analysts stress that while precise figures are rarely disclosed for security reasons, transparency is crucial to maintaining public trust. Media outlets have speculated on potential scenarios, weighing the moral and ethical dimensions of funding security in an overseas context, while also considering the precedent set for future former royals. In addition to structural and personnel measures, security experts emphasize the psychological dimension. High-profile individuals require not only physical protection but also training in threat awareness, situational assessment, and digital hygiene. Harry and Meghan, having experienced intense media scrutiny and public hostility, are particularly vulnerable to stress-related risks. The palace's financial support, therefore, may also encompass training, monitoring, and ongoing advisory services to mitigate psychological strain and maintain situational awareness. The interplay between security and public perception is delicate. Overly visible measures can attract attention and feed narratives of elitism, while understated measures must be sophisticated enough to respond effectively to threats. Analysts note that the Sussexes' Montecito estate reflects a careful balance, integrating protection with privacy, technology with human oversight, and physical infrastructure with digital safeguards. While the cost may appear extravagant to the public, security experts argue that such investment is warranted given the couple's unique profile and historical threats. Legal considerations also influence security strategy. In the United States, the use of private security firms is regulated differently than in the United Kingdom, requiring careful adherence to local laws, licensing requirements, and liability considerations. Coordinating with law enforcement while maintaining discretion and operational secrecy adds layers of complexity. The partial allocation of royal funds to address these requirements demonstrates the intertwined nature of protection, legality, and personal autonomy in the context of former senior royals residing abroad. Finally, the palace confirmation sparked discussions about precedent. If former royals relocating internationally require security support, what limits should be established? How much funding is appropriate? And how should transparency be ensured without compromising safety? These questions resonate not only in the UK but across the international community, highlighting broader issues of privilege, public accountability, and the responsibilities of individuals who once occupied positions of extraordinary visibility and influence. In summary, the security implications surrounding the Montecito mansion are vast, complex, and integral to understanding the use of royal funds. While public outrage focuses on perceived extravagance, the underlying necessity of comprehensive protection cannot be dismissed. From physical barriers and surveillance systems to cyber defenses, contingency planning, and psychological support, the Sussexes' safety infrastructure represents a significant investment in risk mitigation. The palace confirmation, controversial as it is, underscores the tension between public perception and the palace's confirmation that royal funds were partially used to finance the Montecito mansion triggered an immediate and intense public reaction. News outlets across the United States and the United Kingdom splashed headlines. Social media erupted with commentary, and public discourse shifted from speculation to outrage. Taxpayers, who assumed that funds provided to the royal family were strictly for official duties, now felt a sense of betrayal. Living off the crown you publicly rejected became a recurring phrase in online forums and news comment sections, encapsulating the growing perception that Harry and Meghan were exploiting royal resources while claiming independence. Within hours of the announcement, media coverage painted a dramatic picture. Analysts dissected financial statements, pieced together public records, and speculated about the proportion of funds used for the mansion's purchase versus other expenses. Popular British tabloids framed the story as a scandalous misuse of money meant for public service, while U.S. outlets emphasized the audacity of former royals allegedly receiving hidden support for their extravagant lifestyle in California. Headlines ranged from the incredulous $14 million mansion paid by taxpayers to the accusatory Sussex's secret royal funds shocked public. Social media platforms amplified the outrage. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram became arenas for debate, with millions of users weighing in on whether Harry and Meghan had acted ethically. Many commentators drew contrasts between the couple's public statements of independence and the newly revealed financial arrangements, highlighting the perceived hypocrisy. Memes and viral posts circulated rapidly, often juxtaposing the grandeur of the Montecito property with the sacrifices and responsibilities of ordinary taxpayers. Analysts observed that the story's virality stemmed not just from the monetary figures involved, but from the emotional resonance of perceived injustice. Public opinion polls conducted in the days following the palace confirmation reflected a significant shift. While the Sussexes previously enjoyed moderate support in both countries, the disclosure of funding sparked skepticism and disapproval among a growing segment of the population. In the United Kingdom, commentators emphasized the historical responsibility of royal funds to support official duties, charitable work, and the upkeep of public estates. The diversion of these funds, even partially, to finance a luxurious private property abroad struck a nerve with citizens who are acutely aware of national economic pressures and public spending scrutiny. In the United States, the focus centered on the optics of celebrities living lavishly on money from a foreign monarchy. Coverage emphasized the cultural fascination with royals, the allure of celebrity lifestyles, and the broader question of accountability. Analysts highlighted the irony of Harry and Meghan, who had publicly criticized the royal family's treatment of them, now benefiting financially from the same institution they portrayed as restrictive. Social media commentary often included comparisons to Hollywood standards, noting that even in celebrity circles, such a high-profile property financed through opaque means would attract scrutiny. Several prominent media figures weighed in, adding layers of interpretation and speculation. Political commentators questioned the ethics of hidden funding from a quasi-public institution, while royal correspondents examined the implications for the monarchy's reputation. Some framed the situation as an inevitable consequence of Harry and Meghan's high-profile departure from royal duties. The palace may have allocated funds discreetly to protect the couple's privacy and security, anticipating the risks associated with international relocation. Others argued that discretion should not override public accountability, especially given the magnitude of the funds involved. The narrative in tabloids often took on a sensational tone, emphasizing drama and scandal. Headlines focused on the secret payments and hidden financing, highlighting the tension between Harry and Meghan's statements of independence and the reality of ongoing support from royal coffers. Commentary pieces dissected the mansion's features, from its sprawling gardens to its luxury amenities, framing them as symbols of entitlement and excess. These reports often included side-by-side comparisons with other high-profile celebrity homes, inviting readers to judge the Sussexes against both royal and Hollywood standards. Public reactions were not uniform, however. Many supporters of the Sussexes defended the couple, emphasizing the risks associated with their relocation and the potential need for security-related expenses. Arguments highlighted that former senior royals remain high-profile individuals, subject to threats from paparazzi, stalkers, and other opportunistic actors. Proponents contended that funding allocated for the mansion may have been necessary to ensure safety and privacy, rather than pure indulgence, and that the palace's confirmation merely reflected transparency rather than scandal. Legal experts also weighed in, discussing the complexities of royal funding, sovereign grants, and private expenditures. Analyses suggested that while some funds are intended strictly for official duties, other allocations may be discretionary, used to cover security, travel, and housing needs for members of the royal family. The controversy, therefore, highlighted the ambiguous boundaries between public accountability and personal protection, a gray area that critics seized upon while supporters sought to contextualize. In addition to traditional media, podcasts and online forums became critical spaces for in-depth debate. Influencers and commentators dissected the financial details, speculated on the implications for future royal funding, and raised ethical questions about transparency and oversight. The discussion often extended to hypothetical scenarios, imagining how similar situations would be perceived if other public figures or wealthy families received similar support. Analysts noted that the Sussexes' unique combination of celebrity, former royal status, and international residency amplified public scrutiny, making this situation particularly high-profile and volatile. Cultural commentators emphasized the narrative tension inherent in the story. Harry and Meghan have cultivated a public image rooted in independence, social consciousness, and advocacy for personal autonomy. The revelation that royal funds contributed to their lavish U.S. residence created a cognitive dissonance for many observers, framing the couple as living in contradiction to the principles they espouse. This narrative was further fueled by comparisons to ordinary taxpayers, with social media users pointing out the disparity between everyday struggles and the grandeur of Montecito. The timing of the announcement also intensified public reaction. Coming at a moment when global attention is increasingly focused on economic pressures, inflation, and the equitable allocation of public resources, the confirmation of royal fund usage struck a particularly sensitive chord. Commentators noted that the story resonates beyond royal circles, touching on broader societal themes: wealth, privilege, accountability, and the responsibilities of public figures. The juxtaposition of Harry and Meghan's luxurious lifestyle against widespread economic concern amplified outrage, driving media coverage and public discourse. Further fueling the debate were leaked insights from anonymous palace insiders and financial analysts. These sources suggested that while a portion of the funds was indeed allocated for security and logistical considerations, a substantial sum may have contributed to home renovations, furnishings, and lifestyle enhancements. This information, though unofficial, circulated widely, reinforcing narratives of extravagance and prompting calls for greater transparency in royal financial management. Social psychologists observing the situation noted that the story touches on universal human themes: fairness, transparency, and perceived hypocrisy. The Sussexes' high visibility magnifies these dynamics, with ordinary citizens projecting expectations of accountability onto individuals who occupy positions of extraordinary privilege. Emotional responses, ranging from anger and disappointment to support and empathy, reflect deeper societal tensions around wealth, morality, and the responsibilities of the powerful. Journalists and commentators also explored the potential long-term impact on the monarchy's reputation. Questions arose regarding the precedent set by supporting former royals abroad, the potential for public backlash, and the broader implications for the sovereign grant. Analysts argued that failure to manage public perception could erode trust in the institution, emphasizing the delicate balance the monarchy must maintain between discretion, protection, and transparency. In the United Kingdom, parliamentary discussions briefly touched on the issue. Members of Parliament queried whether oversight mechanisms were sufficient, whether funds were properly accounted for, and how the public might be assured that allocations serve legitimate purposes. Although the matter did not escalate into formal investigation, the mere presence of political scrutiny intensified media coverage and public interest. Celebrity and entertainment media in the United States approached the story from a lifestyle perspective. Coverage highlighted architectural details, interior design, and the exclusivity of the Montecito area. Profiles focused on the mansion's features: the infinity pool, sprawling gardens, guest houses, and sweeping views, underscoring the contrast between luxury and public expectation. While some readers were captivated by the spectacle, others criticized the focus on aesthetics over ethical considerations. The international media response was similarly polarized. European outlets emphasized questions of ethics, transparency, and royal propriety, while American media often framed the story as an intersection of celebrity culture and political accountability. Analysts observed that the Sussexes' global profile ensured that no regional audience would ignore the narrative, and the widespread coverage helped solidify the story as a major international controversy. Public forums and opinion pieces frequently debated the balance between necessity and indulgence. Could the mansion, with its security features and accommodations, be justified as a protective measure? Or did the grandeur of the estate cross the threshold into lavishness that taxpayers should never fund? These discussions reflected broader societal debates about entitlement, responsibility, and the moral obligations of the wealthy. Supporters of the Sussexes argued that the couple's high-profile status necessitated extraordinary security measures, which inherently involved significant financial outlay. They contended that public outrage often overlooks the hidden complexities of protection, legal obligations, and international residency. The narrative, in their view, misrepresents the reality of safeguarding former senior royals while exaggerating the perception of indulgence. Detractors, however, framed the story as emblematic of privilege unchecked by accountability. Headlines highlighted phrases such as "secretly paid for with royal funds" and "living off the crown she rejected," creating a moral narrative that resonated with audiences concerned about fairness and transparency. The debate extended beyond finances, touching on values, ethics, and societal expectations for individuals who wield extraordinary influence. In summary, the public reaction and media storm surrounding the Montecito mansion reveal a complex interplay of outrage, fascination, and ethical questioning. From tabloid sensationalism to analytical commentary, from social media debates to political scrutiny, the story captivated global attention. While supporters emphasized security and protection, critics highlighted perceived hypocrisy and extravagance. The confirmation that royal funds were partially used for the Montecito mansion not only ignited public debate, but also prompted immediate legal scrutiny. Within days, law firms specializing in international finance, tax law, and charitable trusts began examining the situation, analyzing the potential for breaches in legal protocols governing the use of royal finances. In both the United Kingdom and the United States, experts debated whether the allocations violated any statutory obligations or fiduciary duties tied to the sovereign grant, security expenditures, or transparency requirements for former senior royals. In the UK, legal commentators emphasized the sovereign grant's intended purpose to cover the official duties and expenses of the monarchy, including staffing, travel, property maintenance, and security. Although the grant has discretionary elements, especially when it comes to security and protection of royal family members, the scale of the Montecito property expenditures raised red flags. Analysts asked whether allocating funds for a private mansion in another country, primarily for lifestyle purposes, fell outside acceptable use. Some legal scholars argued that even discretionary funding should be closely tied to duties or protective measures, and diverting substantial sums to support a private residence without public accountability could constitute a breach of trust or misuse of public funds. Across the Atlantic, U.S. legal experts weighed in on the matter from the perspective of taxation, immigration, and property law. Questions arose about whether the funds used for the Montecito property, if derived from public sources abroad, had implications under U.S. tax law. Could the palace's discrete transfer of money be considered taxable income? Were there proper declarations made to U.S. authorities for assets acquired by non-resident foreigners? The complexity of these questions highlighted the intersection of international finance and the peculiar status of former senior royals living abroad. Investigators also turned their attention to the financial structures behind the mansion's acquisition. Trusts, shell companies, and offshore entities associated with the Sussexes were reviewed to determine the flow of funds. Sources close to investigative journalists suggested that lawyers in both countries were meticulously mapping property ownership, mortgage arrangements, renovation invoices, and security contracts. Every document, from payment records to bank transfers, became a potential piece of evidence in a broader assessment of legality and compliance. As the media coverage intensified, several watchdog organizations voiced concerns. Transparency advocacy groups called for a full audit of royal fund allocations to former senior royals, emphasizing the public's right to know how money sourced from taxpayers is spent. Campaigns were launched demanding answers, with petitions circulating online urging government oversight and accountability measures. These calls placed additional pressure on both the palace and legal authorities to provide clarity and, if necessary, justify the financial arrangements. The palace responded cautiously. Official statements emphasized that security and protection considerations had guided funding decisions, framing the expenditure as necessary to safeguard the couple and their family. These statements, while reassuring to some, were met with skepticism by critics, who pointed out that security costs alone could not account for the scale of the mansion's lavish features, including extensive landscaping, guest houses, pools, and luxury interior design elements. Legal analysts highlighted that discretionary funds for protection must be reasonable and proportional. Excessive use could be challenged in court or through parliamentary oversight. In addition to formal legal scrutiny, investigative journalists pursued their own inquiries. Leaks from palace insiders suggested that multiple layers of approvals were involved in the fund allocation, ranging from financial officers within the royal household to advisors with expertise in international security. While these layers might have been designed to ensure procedural compliance, they also indicated the complexity and opacity of the process, fueling questions about accountability. Reporters dug into financial filings, real estate records, and even contractor invoices to construct a comprehensive picture of how the Montecito property was funded, creating an information trail that could be relevant in any potential legal examination. U.S. media outlets, in particular, focused on whether the Sussexes' actions could trigger tax liabilities. Analysts speculated about gift taxes, capital gains considerations, and reporting obligations for foreign assets, noting that failure to comply could have legal consequences. Although the palace's involvement complicates the matter, as the source of funds was foreign and potentially exempt from certain U.S. taxes, experts cautioned that undisclosed or improperly reported transactions might attract scrutiny from the Internal Revenue Service or other regulatory bodies. The potential for cross-border legal implications added another layer of urgency to ongoing investigations. The controversy also sparked discussion about broader legal reforms. Commentators in the UK suggested that clearer guidelines should be established for discretionary funding of former senior royals, particularly regarding international relocations and property acquisitions. They argued that current rules, while flexible, leave room for interpretations that could be perceived as misuse or favoritism. Proposals range from mandatory parliamentary oversight to independent auditing of large expenditures, especially when public perception of fairness is at stake. Legal analysts also examine the implications for Harry and Meghan personally. Beyond institutional funding, questions emerged about potential liability for misrepresentation or failure to disclose sources of income. Could the couple be held responsible if they knowingly benefited from funds allocated under ambiguous pretenses? Although the answer depends on the specific agreements and legal frameworks involved, speculation about potential consequences fueled further media coverage and public debate. Meanwhile, security experts added a different perspective, emphasizing that high-profile former royals face unique threats that complicate traditional legal and financial analysis. Threat assessments, risk mitigation strategies, and the cost of protective measures in high-profile residences can easily reach seven-figure sums annually. Analysts noted that while the public may perceive expenditures as extravagant, these costs can be justified in the context of personal safety, privacy, and protection from both physical and reputational harm. U.S. and U.K. law firms quickly began fielding inquiries from concerned citizens, advocacy groups, and media organizations. Some sought clarity on whether existing legal mechanisms were sufficient to hold institutions accountable when discretionary funds are used for private purposes. Others questioned whether international law, tax treaties, or property regulations might intersect with royal funding arrangements in ways that had not been fully explored. The combined effect of media scrutiny, public outcry, and legal inquiry created a high-pressure environment, forcing palace officials and legal advisors to respond carefully and strategically. In parallel, investigative teams examined previous patterns of royal funding to determine whether the Montecito case was an anomaly or part of an established practice. Historical analyses suggested that former senior royals have occasionally received continued support, particularly for security reasons, but the scale and opulence of the Montecito property distinguished this situation. Comparative studies showed that previous relocations typically involved smaller sums and more modest accommodations, intensifying public and legal concern. Financial advisors specializing in high-net-worth individuals also weighed in, highlighting potential long-term ramifications. If legal challenges or public opinion led to stricter scrutiny, future allocations for former royals could be subject to audits, approval processes, or formal restrictions. This prospect raised questions about precedent. Would Harry and Meghan's situation prompt systemic changes in royal funding practices? Would other members of the royal family face similar oversight in the future? These considerations underscored the broader institutional implications of the Montecito controversy. The combination of public outcry, media scrutiny, and legal attention created a sense of urgency within the palace. Advisors emphasized crisis management, public relations strategy, and careful legal positioning. Any misstep could exacerbate the situation, potentially triggering parliamentary debates, lawsuits, or further negative publicity. Strategic communication, transparency where possible, and legal defensibility became central to the palace's approach in managing the fallout. At the same time, the Sussexes maintained a public posture of independence and normalcy, carefully managing appearances and statements. They issued measured communications emphasizing their personal privacy, security needs, and dedication to charitable work, while avoiding direct engagement with accusations about funding. This approach, while protective in tone, did little to quell public debate, as media outlets continued to explore every available detail of property ownership, fund allocation, and discretionary spending. International media attention further complicated the legal landscape. Outlets in Europe, North America, and Asia closely monitored developments, reporting on financial filings, property records, and expert commentary. The global audience ensured that legal interpretations, opinions, and potential ramifications were scrutinized from multiple perspectives, creating a complex network of accountability and expectation. Analysts noted that any legal decisions or clarifications would likely have reputational consequences far beyond the immediate parties involved. In addition to financial and tax-related concerns, legal experts raised questions about contract law and fiduciary duties. Agreements between the palace, the sovereign grant administrators, and the Sussexes may contain clauses specifying permissible expenditures, reporting obligations, and compliance requirements. Any deviation from these contractual expectations could potentially trigger legal liability or public accountability mechanisms. Careful examination of these documents became a priority for investigators seeking to understand both the legality and ethics of fund allocation. As weeks progressed, the legal landscape evolved. Lawyers prepared formal inquiries, internal audits were conducted, and palace financial officers reviewed records to ensure compliance with both domestic and international regulations. These measures aimed to protect institutional integrity while mitigating the risk of legal challenges. At the same time, public debate continued to rage online, with citizens, commentators, and advocacy groups demanding clarity, accountability, and, in some cases, restitution or reimbursement for perceived misuse of funds. The convergence of public outrage, media attention, and legal scrutiny created a multifaceted crisis. On one hand, there was the human dimension, the Sussexes' need for security, privacy, and normalcy in a highly visible lifestyle. On the other hand, there were institutional and legal considerations, accountability, adherence to the law, and ethical stewardship of public resources. Navigating these competing imperatives became a central challenge for the palace, the Sussexes, and legal advisors alike, ensuring that every decision and statement carried weight, both legally and publicly. Ultimately, the legal scrutiny surrounding the Montecito mansion highlighted the delicate balance between privilege, security, and public accountability. The controversy underscored the complexities inherent in managing funds for high-profile former royals, especially when their lives intersect with international finance, tax law, and media attention. Each layer, from property acquisition to security considerations, public perception. As news of the Montecito mansion expenditures spread, media outlets around the globe pounced on the story with an intensity rarely seen for former senior royals living abroad. Headlines ranged from incredulous to scandalous, often framing the narrative around alleged misuse of funds and extravagant lifestyles. Tabloids splashed front-page stories about royal splurges and hidden luxuries, while respected broadsheets analyzed the legal and ethical dimensions, often citing experts in finance, law, and royal protocol. Social media amplified the coverage exponentially, with viral posts dissecting every reported detail of the mansion, from its sprawling gardens to its multiple swimming pools and luxury guest wings. The scale of public attention forced the Sussexes and the palace into reactive strategies, both legally and in terms of public relations. In the United Kingdom, public reaction was particularly sharp. Citizens expressed outrage at the perceived misuse of taxpayer money, with online polls and opinion columns highlighting a growing sense of frustration. Many questioned the fairness of providing millions in discretionary funding for a private residence in California, especially at a time when the country faced economic pressures and rising living costs. Public discourse often centered around the juxtaposition of luxury and ordinary citizen struggles, with many commentators emphasizing the optics of such an arrangement. Satirical publications took aim as well, mocking the opulence of the property and speculating humorously about the day-to-day lives of its occupants. The media storm created a relentless feedback loop in which outrage and sensationalism fed on one another, intensifying public scrutiny. Across the Atlantic, the story gained traction in the United States, particularly among political commentators and legal analysts. U.S. media explored the interplay between the Sussexes' royal status, international funding, and tax obligations. Experts dissected whether the use of funds from a foreign source might be subject to reporting requirements or taxation under U.S. law. While some commentators stressed that the monarchy's involvement complicated direct enforcement, others highlighted potential vulnerabilities in how international transfers of significant funds are monitored. The public debate in the United States often intertwined with perceptions of celebrity culture, celebrity wealth, and the broader fascination with the British royal family, creating a unique blend of legal and social interest. Television networks contributed heavily to the saturation of the story. Panels of royal experts, legal analysts, and financial commentators debated the ethical and legal implications on air, often replaying footage of the mansion, photographs of luxury interiors, and maps showing the extent of the estate. Some segments focused on the historical context, comparing current expenditures to previous funding allocated to former senior royals, while others emphasized the shock value of lavish amenities such as private cinemas, multiple infinity pools, and extensive outdoor entertainment spaces. Interviews with security consultants were broadcast, analyzing the costs of ensuring privacy and safety in a high-profile property, while contrasting these with ordinary homeowners' expenses, adding further fuel to public discussion. Amid the media frenzy, investigative journalists played a critical role in shaping public perception. Some conducted deep dives into financial records, tracing the flow of funds from the UK through various trusts and financial instruments, aiming to determine whether allocations adhered to regulatory frameworks. Others examined property records in California, cataloging renovations, construction permits, and landscaping projects. While much of the reporting relied on publicly available documents, leaks from unnamed sources within the palace and financial institutions added a layer of intrigue and suspicion. These investigative pieces often presented narratives suggesting deliberate obfuscation of spending, feeding the perception of secretive financial maneuvers. The Sussexes themselves engaged in a carefully curated media strategy, issuing limited statements emphasizing personal safety, privacy, and security concerns without directly addressing allegations of excessive spending. In these communications, they highlighted the unique threats faced by high-profile former royals, ranging from media intrusion to potential physical dangers. By framing the narrative around protection and well-being, the Sussexes sought to contextualize expenses in a way that could resonate with sympathetic audiences, particularly in the United States, where media consumption is often influenced by celebrity narratives. Despite these efforts, public opinion remained divided, with critics arguing that security needs could not justify the apparent extravagance of the Montecito estate. Social media became a battleground for public discourse, with hashtags, memes, and viral commentary circulating rapidly. On platforms like Twitter, X, and Instagram, users compared the Sussexes mansion to other high-profile estates, sometimes emphasizing the disparity between royal support and the financial realities of average citizens. Some posts framed the situation humorously, creating satirical content portraying the mansion as a royal palace in exile, while others treated it with gravity, accusing the Sussexes of exploiting public funds. Influencers and online commentators contributed to shaping perceptions, blending factual reporting with opinion and emotional engagement, further complicating the palace's attempts to control the narrative. Internationally, the coverage varied based on cultural context and media norms. In countries with strong monarchist traditions, some outlets were more measured, emphasizing historical precedent and security considerations. In nations with strong public oversight of elite wealth, the reporting often adopted a more critical tone, highlighting the apparent disparity between public resources and private luxury. In both cases, the Montecito mansion became a lens through which broader discussions about accountability, privilege, and global perceptions of the British monarchy were debated. Public opinion polls in the UK reflected a sharp decline in favorability for the Sussexes. Analysts noted that trust and perception are fragile when financial matters intersect with media exposure, especially in cases involving international relocations and taxpayer-funded resources. Supporters of the Sussexes argued that the intense media scrutiny was disproportionate and sensationalized, emphasizing privacy and safety concerns. Opponents countered by highlighting the symbolic significance of using public funds for personal comfort abroad, arguing that transparency and accountability were paramount. This polarization underscored the challenge of maintaining public legitimacy in the face of both media amplification and complex legal structures. Editorial voices also shaped discourse, with opinion columns framing the situation in ethical, legal, and social terms. Some argued that the Sussexes were victims of intense media intrusion and public fascination, highlighting historical precedents in which former senior royals required ongoing protection. Others emphasized moral responsibility and the appearance of impropriety, suggesting that regardless of legality, the optics of lavish spending on a foreign estate could undermine public trust in royal funding structures. Debates often extended to the balance between personal privacy and public accountability, highlighting the tension inherent in a modern monarchy navigating global scrutiny. The media coverage also extended into detailed analyses of the mansion's amenities, often emphasizing the incongruity between public perception and private reality. Reports cataloged pools, guest houses, gyms, cinemas, and expansive gardens, frequently using visual storytelling to dramatize the extent of the property. Analysts and commentators debated which features were essential for security and which were discretionary indulgences, often speculating on lifestyle choices, social gatherings, and high-profile visitors. The detailed focus on property amenities amplified public fascination, creating a sense of intimacy and immediacy that traditional reporting might not achieve. Despite the intense scrutiny, the Sussexes continued philanthropic activities in parallel, which some media outlets highlighted as evidence of ongoing commitment to social causes. They participated in charitable events, made contributions to global initiatives, and engaged with humanitarian organizations. These actions were often framed as attempts to offset negative perceptions and provide a counter-narrative of responsibility and benevolence. Nevertheless, critics frequently questioned whether philanthropy could offset perceived extravagance, emphasizing that security and lifestyle expenditures were the primary drivers of public controversy. In addition, legal developments, investigative reporting, and media coverage fed into each other in a feedback loop. Leaked documents and expert commentary were picked up by international outlets, discussed on social media, and analyzed by legal experts, creating a continuous cycle of interpretation and amplification. This environment heightened public awareness and encouraged intense scrutiny of every reported detail. In some instances, speculative reporting blurred with confirmed facts, complicating public understanding but increasing engagement and virality. Television documentaries and special reports capitalized on the controversy, producing multi-part series examining every aspect of the Sussexes' relocation, security concerns, and property management. These productions combined investigative journalism with dramatized storytelling, often including interviews with palace insiders, former staff, and independent experts. Visual presentations of the mansion, including aerial footage and interior photography, emphasize scale and luxury, reinforcing public perception of opulence. By framing the narrative as both informative and dramatic, these programs attracted large audiences and influenced discourse across multiple platforms. Political commentators also weighed in, linking the controversy to broader themes of accountability, governance, and fiscal responsibility. In the UK, members of Parliament referenced the case during discussions of royal funding, emphasizing the need for clear oversight and procedural clarity. Some proposed legislative measures to formalize auditing and reporting standards for former senior royals, arguing that public trust required both transparency and enforceable accountability mechanisms. While these measures were debated vigorously, they underscored the political significance of public perception when royal expenditures intersect with taxpayer resources. The coverage extended beyond traditional media to podcasts, online forums, and YouTube channels specializing in royal news and commentary. Independent creators dissected financial filings, historical precedents, and palace communications, often blending factual reporting with speculation and personal opinion. These platforms allowed for direct engagement with audiences, encouraging discussion, debate, and interpretation of the Sussexes' actions. The interactive nature of these forums intensified the sense of public scrutiny, making the story both participatory and pervasive. As weeks turned into months, the Montecito mansion controversy remained a persistent topic of public discourse. The combination of media saturation, social media amplification, investigative journalism, and political commentary created a multi-layered narrative that was difficult to contain. Public opinion, while divided, remained intensely engaged, reflecting broader questions about privilege, transparency, and the responsibilities of former senior royals in a global context. Even within sympathetic circles, there was recognition that perception often matters as much as legality. Communications advisors noted that failure to address public concerns convincingly could result in long-term reputational damage, regardless of legal compliance. This awareness influenced how the Sussexes and their team structured the mounting media storm surrounding the Montecito mansion, and the Sussexes' spending habits forced the British royal family into a period of unprecedented deliberation. King Charles, acutely aware of the optics and the potential impact on the monarchy's public image, convened a series of emergency meetings with senior advisors, palace officials, and legal counsel. The goal was to determine a strategic response that would balance protocol, public perception, and family diplomacy. While the monarchy had always navigated delicate scandals, the global reach of digital media and the virality of the Montecito story elevated this situation to an entirely new level. Every decision was scrutinized, every statement analyzed, and every potential move evaluated not only for immediate effect, but for long-term repercussions. At the heart of the discussions was the question of accountability. King Charles recognized that, regardless of legal obligations, public perception could affect the monarchy's credibility and trust. Advisors presented multiple scenarios, ranging from issuing formal public statements emphasizing prior agreements and security necessities, to quietly increasing oversight of financial arrangements with the Sussexes. There was also consideration of more drastic measures, including potential revocation or adjustment of funds, tighter legal agreements, and increased media management to ensure messaging remained consistent across international platforms. The goal was to address concerns without appearing punitive or creating a further scandal. Queen Camilla, acutely aware of the media's focus on family dynamics, took a personal interest in the situation. She participated in several strategy sessions, offering perspectives on maintaining dignity while protecting the family's reputation. Camilla stressed the importance of framing responses in ways that emphasized the monarchy's role in safeguarding former senior royals, highlighting historical precedent in protecting both privacy and security. Her focus was both tactical and empathetic, acknowledging the intense pressures the Sussexes faced while ensuring the broader royal family's credibility remained intact. Meanwhile, Prince William and Princess Catherine monitored developments closely, both from a personal and institutional perspective. William, increasingly conscious of the monarchy's evolving public image, considered the strategic implications of the controversy for his own future role as king. Discussions emphasized the need for a measured approach. Too harsh a public rebuke could appear vindictive, whereas an action might be interpreted as tacit approval of perceived extravagance. Catherine, drawing on her experience with public engagement and philanthropy, advised on messaging that could balance empathy with accountability, emphasizing initiatives that would redirect public focus toward positive actions rather than sensationalized expenditures. Palace communications teams played a central role in shaping the narrative. A multi-tiered strategy was implemented, combining traditional press releases, carefully timed interviews, and discreet background briefings to select journalists. Messaging emphasized the necessity of the Montecito estate in terms of security and privacy, while subtly reinforcing the Sussexes' ongoing charitable contributions and global engagements. The narrative aimed to position the expenditure not as extravagance, but as part of a broader duty of care for former senior royals living abroad under heightened security risks. Despite these efforts, the team faced challenges in countering the viral spread of images, videos, and social commentary that often bypassed traditional channels entirely. In parallel, legal counsel for the royal family conducted a thorough review of agreements with the Sussexes regarding funding, property use, and accountability measures. Detailed audits were initiated to ensure that expenditures complied with both UK regulations and international legal frameworks, particularly regarding the transfer of funds to California and the classification of these expenditures under charitable or governmental guidelines. Legal advisors also assessed potential vulnerabilities in reporting structures, identifying areas where leaks or miscommunication could exacerbate public criticism. Contingency plans were developed to manage possible lawsuits or inquiries, anticipating that heightened scrutiny might inspire formal investigations by external bodies. The Queen's household introduced an internal task force specifically focused on media monitoring and analysis. This team tracked coverage across global media platforms, social media channels, and emerging online communities, providing daily intelligence reports to senior palace officials. The goal was to identify trends, highlight potential misrepresentations, and prepare rapid responses to emerging narratives. Analysts flagged posts and stories that were likely to generate the most public engagement, allowing the monarchy to proactively address misinformation or exaggerated claims before they gained traction. The task force also collaborated with security teams to assess threats to privacy and safety that could arise from heightened media attention, including the risk of paparazzi intrusion or targeted online harassment. Within the family, the response to the Montecito story revealed subtle tensions between personal loyalty and institutional duty. Prince Harry, increasingly aware of his father and brother's oversight,